welcome to the First Church in Chestnut Hill, at least our online service. Whether this is your first time listening or your 100th time being involved with the church, you are welcome. We will begin with a reading from the book of Psalms, Psalm 16. Protect me, O God, for in you I take refuge. I say to the Lord, you are my Lord. I have no good part apart from you. As for the holy ones in the land, they are the noble, in whom is all my delight. Those who choose another god multiply their sorrows. Their drink offerings of blood I will not pour out or take their names upon my lips. The Lord is my chosen portion and my cup. You hold my lot. The boundary lines have fallen for me in pleasant places. I have a goodly heritage. I bless the Lord who gives me counsel. In the night also my heart instructs me. I keep the Lord always before me. Because he is at my right hand, I shall not be moved. Therefore my heart is glad, and my soul rejoices. My body also rests secure. For you do not give me up to Sheol, or let your faithful ones see the pit. You show me the path of life. In your presence there is fullness of joy. In your right hand are pleasures forevermore. Our next reading is from the book of Genesis, chapter 1, verses 1 to 5. In the beginning, when God created the heavens and the earth was a formless void, and darkness covered the face of the deep, while the wind from God swept over the faces of the waters. Then God said, "Let there be light," and there was light. And God saw that the light was good, and God separated the light from the darkness. God called the light day, and the darkness he called night. And there was evening, and there was morning, the first day. Let there be light. Before this moment there was nothing, or at least there was nothing recognizable to us as human beings. You might interject, well, there was God, but what exactly is God like? And would we recognize God if that opportunity arose, if we were staring into the face of God? Well, we at least know from our reading that light comes from God, and we might presume that before that cosmic moment there was nothing but darkness. And light has now blossomed into being, and therefore a difference has been struck, one between light and dark. Imagine that. Before there was light, there was only darkness. Because what could we call it if we did not have its opposite? Darkness was normal. Darkness was everything. In many ways, we define everything that we know in opposition to something else. Light and darkness, hot and cold, up and down. Those are relative terms. The flame of a candle is much colder than the fires of the sun. And although Australia is referred to as down under, that is only in contrast to merry old England being up at the metaphorical top of the world. And similarly, within the realms of light and darkness, there are gradations. There are areas of gray that might seem bright or shadowed depending upon what you're comparing them with. When we compare literal things, it's easier to make those judgments, but even then, it is still relative. Now try doing that with human beings. What they mean, what they feel, what they intend is much harder. Our eyes and our ears, they receive the light and the sound, but interpreting what is behind what is seen and heard, that is a harder task. Because we have no real way of knowing what people think, what people feel apart from what we can glean from our senses. That task might change slightly when we're familiar with the sources of light and sound, meaning the people we are seeing and the words that they're speaking. We are used to them. That familiarity may develop over time into a sense of trust or a sense of wariness, depending on the other person. We know that she speaks plainly, but he says nothing but self-serving lies. She has a bad temper, he is easygoing. They are very hard to figure out. However we have experienced these sights and these sounds in the past will often dictate our responses to them in the present and may even project out into the future. But is any of that true? And by true, I mean capital T true, like truth, justice, and the American way. True like the highest ideals, true like the most solemn of promises. True like the first light breaking forth on the first day, created by God to shine forth onto a newly born world. Is any of what we see, is any of what we hear true? Do we know that? How can we know that? Think about it this way. Everything that you know, you have either heard or seen or otherwise sensed. It was funneled into your brain, where second by second effort is ongoing, trying to figure out all of this stuff. Sense no longer means perception, but sense in an orderly categorization. Sense as I'm trying to figure out what is going on. Well, how do we do that? Some of it's just built into us. We generally start off born into this world with a few crucial skills. We can recognize faces, we dislike that which is bitter, and we enjoy that which is sweet. We may not know yet what it means to be hungry, but we will do our utmost to let the world know if we are hungry. As babies, we don't really understand what we see or what we touch or what we smell or what we taste or any of that. We start off in life just overwhelmed with our senses. So we sleep a lot and we cry a lot. It's a bit like being in quarantine. Anyway, the ordering process eventually starts to take hold. We figure out light and dark, hot and cold, bitter and sweet. In time, we can walk because we get a sense of balance. We can talk because we figured out that the sounds that people are saying are connected with the objects that we are perceiving. We get used to eating, and we figure out what we're not supposed to eat, more or less. Supposed to and want to are very adult concepts, ones that are often lost on many adults. As babies, we are helpless to start, so we are helped along by someone, moms and dads, siblings and grandparents, and others. We learn about the world by watching all of those others who have usually had a head start on the learning going on. And so what we learn is guided already by what they have learned. It is a building process using what others have already gathered for us. Then we learn from our teachers, we learn from our friends, we learn from the very complicated world that is around us. We learn many things. And yet, how do we figure out if any of that is true, if any of it is meaningful? Someone told us the sky is blue. We can see it, and now we have a word to attach to what we see. It's not called blue until we have that word. It's not called anything, it's just there. It's up there high above our heads. But sometimes the sky is white, and we are told those are clouds, which is distinct from sky. Sometimes the clouds are gray, and that is a sign of something else, a storm. The blue sky is called attractive. The white clouds may be pretty. That will depend upon their shape and their size and how many friends they've brought along. The gray of the storm cloud may signal danger, and yet that is all from a place called sky. I was terrified of storms when I was a child, and that fear specifically included a darkening sky. But I also know plenty of people who are delighted by thunder and lightning, why the difference of experience? Less of a fear of loud noises, less of a fear of flashing lights. Maybe they had a parent who took delight in the storms and shared that joy with children. A grandparent who sat with them and told stories about angels bowling up in the heavens so that the little ones wouldn't be afraid of it. Now, I don't mean to burst any bubbles, but thunder and lightning are not the sounds of heavenly bowling. But that tall tale may serve to take away the sting of fear from seeing or hearing thunder and lightning. It's not true, but it is in service of that which is good. We all may be perceiving the same things, but the meaning we take from those perceptions will be guided by what we've already been taught and by what we've already been told. The story behind it all, the unfolding narrative that we learn from in our heads and that we share with others through our words and actions. The story is also not the truth, but the story may help us make meaning and thereby help us focus on the things that we hold true. Imagine you're looking up at a mountain. It's tall and it's snow-capped. If I'm miles away, it looks one way. Perhaps it's postcard pretty, but it's smaller than what the word mountain tends to sum it up. And yet if I'm at the foot of the mountain, it may be so large that it swamps my ability to take it all in. It strains my senses. Conversely, now I'm standing at the top of the mountain, the summit. I can see the world around me, but the mountain itself, for all of its size, is less captivating than the view. That viewpoint in any one moment can change the way that I perceive the world. Even if we're sharing that same landscape, even if we're looking at the same things, where we are can change what we perceive, and therefore change how we interpret it. Right now, most of the world is sharing one unusual experience. We are living through a pandemic, the greatest disruption of global human civilization for a century. But that shared experience is a lot like looking at that mountain. Where we stand changes how we perceive and how we understand a momentous event. For example, if I'm a young person, healthy and fearless, the threat of being infected by the virus is kind of like the mountain off in the distance. It's over there, it's big and all, but does that have anything really to do with me? It is perceived as a very remote concern. If I'm an older adult or someone with an underlying health problem, or both, it's like the mountain is looming above me. It's broad and tall and just so overwhelming. How do I absorb all of that? What can I do in the face of a mountain? And if I'm high up on top of the mountain, like someone who's trying to make decisions about what needs to be done, I have a different view. Maybe I'm trying to take in as much data as possible, all the detail, but there's so much to see, so many choices to make, so many places to look. Maybe I have one plan in mind, but I'm shutting out all the other possibilities arrayed around me in 360 degrees of overwhelming mountaintop perspective, because now I'm set on that one objective. Maybe that fixed perspective is so compelling that I'm already just looking at the horizon, as if there wasn't a mountain sitting underneath me. I know exactly where I'm going, but I'm forgetting that I somehow have to get off of a mountain in order to do it. I did not mention in that list of perspectives someone who might already be infected, or someone whose loved one is infected. I didn't mention them because they're most likely not paying attention to the mountain. Maybe they feel like they've been hit by a mountain, but they're more likely occupied with looking at one another. Even if that person is far away, even if they're in a hospital or a nursing home all alone, a person in that situation is aware of the mountain, the wider perspective that is now being shared across the world, but they're focused on the ones that they love, the ones that they're worrying over. The world that they inhabit has shrunk down to the size of their worries, the shape of their pain. Now, none of these viewpoints are mutually exclusive. We might shift from worrying over mom, who's far away, to the kids who are close by, to my neighbor next door, then back to ourselves. I might not be giving the virus a second thought when it comes to my personal health, but still be worried sick about everyone around me, even if I'm the one more likely to get sick. Believe me, I know that feeling all too well. We don't have the same roster of feelings playing out in a predictable fashion. We respond differently. We respond differently minute to minute. Some are more anxious, some are more prone to anger, some are keeping it together, but not always. We might be the depressive types, we might be boundlessly optimistic. How we perceive world events will be influenced by our circumstances as much as our personalities. I have over my lifetime been without health insurance for extended periods. Not surprisingly, when I have health insurance, I'm less worried about getting sick. I have been unemployed a few times in my life. When I had a job, I was justifiably less worried about making ends meet. The way we understand our world is refracted through the understanding we have about our lives. Plenty of people are still out and about. They're on the streets, they're on the trains, but don't they know they're going to get sick? Well, they may have an idea about it, but they also know that no one else is going to pay their bills. Someone has to do the essential work, whether it is essential for others or essential just to keep ourselves above water. Being safe may be a luxury that some people can't afford. If we do not have an understanding of someone else's circumstances, we don't have an insight into the truth about their lives. It may be tempting to take our experiences, our background, our opinions, and paint the world in familiar and comforting colors. This is how it should all be, but what does a person who has never been hungry a day in their life have to say to someone who struggles from paycheck to paycheck throughout their life? Be more like me? Be fortunate enough to have been born to the right parents in the right town on the right side of the tracks? Those things can change, but it's worth keeping in mind. When we try to change the world for the better over the coming months and years, and I sincerely hope we all get together and try that, it's worth remembering that fixing the problem to suit one group of people will not be quite as good for all groups of people. Why should I worry about the public schools when my kids are now all grown up? Because society does not begin and end with one person's life or their current personal requirements. Why should I care about Medicare and Medicaid and Social Security when I doubt that they'll survive until I need them? Because we're trying to build a nation to help people who are young and people who are not so young. So we need schools, and we need pensions, and we need health care. Why should I concern myself with racism when I'm not a racist? Because racism has been carved into the very woodwork of American society. That is a topic that would take over 10 sermons, and I'll save those for later. In the beginning, there was only darkness, meaning there was no light. Then suddenly there was light. Life made life possible. Life made sight possible. Light, however, is not the same as truth. Life is how we live and grow and see, but it's merely one part of the world. Light shows, but it does not tell, just as seeing and hearing alone are not the same as understanding. And so we're left on our own trying to figure out the world around us. We have one another, and that helps. We have ancient wisdom we have gathered and the common sense we so vigorously cling to, but we still look into the faces of those around us, knowing that we can't completely understand what they think and feel. And they cannot know everything that we think and feel. That is a part of the human condition. We can work at being better communicators, that would be great. But it's always worth remembering that the picture that we have of others, that others have of us, is invariably incomplete. The light will only show us so much. The stories we tell of ourselves, the wider tale of humanity. Before there was light, there was darkness. And out in the darkness, there was God. Always God. So it would be interesting to assume that when we look into the faces of others, when we are trying to puzzle out how to act and what to do with the people around us, imagine in that moment that we are peering into the face of God. It is a guess about the world. It is a bet, but it's a good bet. We can always find a little bit of God in each of us. For God made the light and said that the light was good. And God made each of us. So there is bound to be something good in each of us as well. We just have to look. And there is bound to be something that we need to discover, we need to learn about that other person. And we just have to listen. So ends the sermon. Let us end this time together by joining together in prayer. Let us say now the Lord's Prayer. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, and the power, and the glory, forever and ever. Amen. Our service is ended, but may our service to one another never end. Go in peace, my friends. Amen.